Daf Yomi Tractate Sanhedrin, page 62a, top of the page. Just a side note, the word Sanhedrin in Hebrew and Samach Beis, Samach Bet, has a gematria. In gematria has a numerical value of 441. Sanhedrin is 379 and Samach Beis is 62. 62 and 379 is 441. 62, let's see here. Let's have a look. Let's look at our calculator and see. 379, which is Sanhedrin, plus 62. 441, of course. Alright, so that means 441 is the gematria of MS, which is truth. And hopefully we'll find some truth on this page. Top of the page. And if he did not accept that person upon himself as a god, but rather bowed to the statue in order to honor the person, for example, the king, what he did is nothing. Rather, it is the Braita not referring to a case where the high priest unwittingly worshipped an idol due to love or due to fear of someone. This proves that this is also considered idol worship. And Rava could have said to you in response, no. The Braita is not referring to this case, but to a case where the high priest says to himself that idol worship is permitted. Omer mutar, hainu helem davar. Helem davar, that's been a big term lately. Let's see here. Helem davar has a numerical value of 351. Okay. The Gemara challenges if the Braita is referring to a case where the high priest says to himself that idol worship is permitted. This is a case of a lapse of awareness considering the fundamental halachot of idol worship, in which case the rabbis concede that the high priest is obligated to bring an offering. Therefore, what is the difference between the opinion of Yehuda, Hanasi, and that of the sages? Ba'omer mutar legamri b'helem davar kiyum miktzat ubitul miktzat. The Gemara answers it is a case where he says to himself that idol worship is entirely permitted, whereas the case of a lapse of awareness in which the rabbis concede to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi in a case of upholding part of the prohibition and negating another part of it, meaning in a case where the high priest recognizes that idol worship is prohibited, but mistakenly assumes that certain idolatrous activities are permitted. Tani Rabbi Zakkai coming Rabbi Yochanan. Zibach v'kita v'nisach v'shnachaven be'elam achad enochai v'rad echad. Rabbi Zakkai taught the following Braita before Rabbi Yochanan: if one sacrifices an animal as an idolatrous offering, and burned incense as an idolatrous offering, and poured a libation to an idol, and bowed to an idol, all in the course of one lapse of awareness, forgetting that these actions were prohibited, he is obligated to bring only one sin offering. He is not obligated to bring an offering for each and every act of idol worship. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, go out and teach it outside. What he meant was that such a braita must not be taught in the study hall, as the halacha is that one is obligated to bring an offering for each and every act of idol worship. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rabbi Zakkai, Machloket Rav Yossi v'Ravi Nasan, Etaya. Havara lelav Yossis divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rav Abba says that which Rabbi Zakkai says, wow, this is a big daf. Huge. Maybe I'll have to do half, I think. You know? That which Rabbi Zakkai says is subject to a Tannaitic dispute between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Natan, as is taught in the Bride of the prohibition against kindling a fire on Shabbat was singled out from the general category of labor prohibited on Shabbat, and that is written explicitly in the Torah in this verse: "You shall not kindle a fire in all your dwelling places on the Sabbath day." Exodus 35:3. This was done to teach that the prohibition against kindling a fire on Shabbat is unlike other prohibited labors. It is an ordinary prohibition for which one is not liable to be killed by stoning. This is the statement of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Natan Omer Chalek Yasis. Rabbi Natan says kindling a fire is like any other labor prohibited on Shabbat. Okay, and it was singled out to divide the prohibited labors of Shabbat. In other words, by stating one is prohibited labor separately, the Torah teaches that each labor performed on Shabbat constitutes its own separate prohibition. Consequently, one who unwittingly violates several categories of labor is obligated to bring a sin offering for each and every act of prohibited labor. Rabbi Abba concludes, according to the one who says that all of the labors that are prohibited on Shabbat, kindling a fire on Shabbat, was singled out to be mentioned in the Torah to teach that it is an ordinary prohibition. Then bowing in the category of idol worship, which is mentioned explicitly in the verse, "You shall not bow to them or worship them," Exodus 20 verse 5, was also singled out to teach that it is an ordinary prohibition which is not punishable by stoning. Put this on pause and continue in a different area. Continuing right along, whereas according to the one who says that kindling a fire was singled out to divide the prohibited labors of Shabbat, bowing was also singled out to divide the rites of idol worship, meaning to teach that one who unwittingly performs several forms of idol worship is obligated to bring a sin offering for each and every act of idol worship. Therefore, the Braita taught by Rabbi Zakkai, which states that a person is obligated to bring only one sin offering, is in accordance with the former opinion, meaning the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Maskif Rabbi Yosef, Dilma Adkan, Lo Kamar Rabbi Yossi, Hasam Havara Lelav Yotzi, Sinafkale, Chilik Mulachos Me'achas Meheno. Rabbi Yossi objects to this. Perhaps Rabbi Yossi says there, with regard to the halacha of Shabbat, that kindling a fire was singled out to teach that it is an ordinary prohibition only because he derives division of labors of Shabbat, that one is obligated to bring an offering for each category of labor that he violated from a different verse, namely from one of them. Leviticus 4 verse 2. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ve'asa me'achas mehena pamim shechayev achas al kulon pamim shechayev al kol achas v'achas. As it is taught in Braita, that Rabbi Yossi says, with regard to the verse, if anyone shall sin through error in any of these things which the Lord has commanded not to be done, and performs one of them, Leviticus 4:2, that there are times when one is liable to bring one sin offering for all of his transgressions together, and there are times when one is liable to bring a sin offering for each and every transgression. Rabbi Yonasan says, "My time at Rabbi Yossi Dixiv, V'yasam Yachas Meheno Achas V'Achas Hena Mehena Achas Shehi Hine V'Hine Shehi or Hena Shehi Achas." Rabbi Yonasan says, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, as is written, and performs from one of them, And Rabbi Yossi interprets the verse as follows. The word one is qualified. The verse states from one. Likewise, the term them is qualified, and as the verse states of them, Rabbi Yossi derives that there are cases of one transgression that, with regard to punishment, is them, meaning many, and there are cases of them, meaning several transgressions, that with regard to punishment are one. Achas Shimon, Achas Shem, Shimon. Rabbi Yonasan delineates the implementation of this principle with regard to the halacha of Shabbat. One complete violation is, for example, a case where one wrote a whole word as he intended, such as the name Shimon. The term from one is referring to a case where one performed only part of a complete act of labor. For example, he wrote only some of the letters of a word, such as shin, mem from the name Shimon. These two letters spell the word Shem. And in such a case, one is obligated to bring an offering for his transgression of writing two letters, shin and mem, even though he did not complete his intended act of writing out the entire name Shimon. Okay? Hine Avos Mehena told us Achasi Hena Zedon Shabbos Hena Shehu Achas Shigas Shabbos Uzedon Melachos. Rabbi Yochanan continues, them is referring to the primary categories of labor. The term of them includes the subcategories of labor. The cases of one transgression with regard to punishment is them, meaning it is counted as many transgressions are those involving intention, meaning awareness on the part of the transgressor that it was Shabbat, and unawareness on the part of the transgressor that the acts of labor that he was performing are prohibited on Shabbat. One who transgresses in this way is obligated to bring a sin offering for each and every category of labor that he engages in the cases of them. Several transgressions with regard to punishment are those involving unawareness on the part of the transgressor that it was Shabbat and intention. Awareness that the acts of labor that he was performing are prohibited on Shabbat, and one who transgresses in this way is obligated to bring only one sin offering. Aval hacha delo nafkele lechiluk malachot miduchta achariti. The Gemara concludes his objection to Rabbi Akiva's comparison between the status of the prohibition against kindling a fire on Shabbat and the status of the prohibition against bowing to an idol. The fact that Rabbi Yossi derives that kindling fire on Shabbat is not punishable by death can be attributed to the fact that he derives from a different verse that one who violates with several categories of labor is obligated to bring us an offering for each and every category of labor that he engages in. But here, with regard to idol worship, where he does not derive the division of labors, meaning a division of categories of idol worship from another place, perhaps everyone agrees that bowing was singled out to divide the prohibition of idol worship into different categories, and bowing to an idol is punishable by death, just as any other forms of worship. The Gemara asks, according to both opinions, that Rav Abba said, that Rav Yosef said, why do not derive the division of labor with regard to idol worship from the same verse from which Rabbi Yossi derives the division of laborers with regard to Shabbat, namely for one of them. Since this verse is not referring to the halacha of Shabbat in particular, it can be interpreted with regard to idol worship. In the same manner that it is interpreted with regard to Shabbat, the word one is referring to a complete prohibited act of worship, such as sacrificing an animal as an idolatrous offering. The term from one is referring to one who performs part of an act of worship. For example, one who did not finish slaughtering the offering as he served only one of the organs, the windpipe and the gullet, there must be served in a ritual slaughter. Hine avos zibuach kitur v'nisov v'shnachava mehena tolados shavar mekalel mifaneha. The word "them" is referring to the primary category. Idol worship and derives character from the manner of which God is worshipped in the temple, namely sacrificing an animal as an offering, burning incense, pouring libation, and bowling. The term of them is referring to some categories of idol worship. For example, one who broke a stick before an idol that is worshipped in such a manner. Breaking a stick is a subcategory of sacrificing. An animal's neck is broken when it is slaughtered. How much time do you have left here? Oh, we have, okay. Achas mihena, achas shehi hena zidon, avodah zara shiyos avodah. So hine shehi achas, shehi avodah zara uzidon ambos. The principle of one transgression with regard to punishment is them, meaning many can be applied to a case of intention, in awareness, and part of the transgressor, that idol, is prohibited, and unawareness that the particular rites of worship that he was performing are prohibited. The principle of them, several transgressions that with regard to punishment are one can be applied to a case of awareness with regard to the prohibition of idol worship, meaning the transgressor was unaware that the idol worship is prohibited, or that he was worshiping an idol and intention, awareness that the rites and that he was performing are prohibited. My shigas echidami kasavar. Wow. Can I make it to the end? Kasavar. Wow. Rather must be a case where the transgressor saw a statue of a person Adartha, a person bows to it. In this case must also be clarified. If he accepted that person upon himself as a god, he is an intentional transgressor and is liable to receive the death penalty, not to bring an offering. If he did not accept upon himself as a god, but rather bowed to the statue in order to honor the person, what he did is nothing. Rather, it is clearly a case where one worships an idol due to love or for fear of someone, and he was unaware that this is prohibited. This works out well according to Abaya, who says that one who engages in idol worship due to love or fear is liable. Accordingly, one who does so must bring an offering. But according to Rava, who says that one who does so is exempt, what can be said? Ella ba'omer mutar tishot de'payvina Rava me'rav Nachman helem ze yado mahu. Rather, according to Rava, unawareness with regard to idol worship can be explained as referring to a case where the transgressor says to himself that idol worship is permitted in general. If so, one can resolve the limit that Rava raised before Nachman. What is the halacha if one violated Shabbat as a lapse of awareness of both this, meaning that it was Shabbat and that that the particular labor that he performed is prohibited on Shabbat. Tishbot Ti Enochayim Ela Achas Halo Kashya B'Tishbot. Rav's limit has been unresolved. If the phrase "and one performs one of them" is interpreted as referring to a case where one emerges in idol worship, thinking that it is permitted to do so, can one resolve that the transgressor is obligated to bring only one sin offering for all of his acts of idol worship? According to this interpretation of the verse, the fact that Rava's dilemma has been left unresolved, therefore serves as a challenge to this interpretation. The Gemara refutes this challenge. This is not difficult. Indeed, resolve the dilemma this way. Mi matzis lakomas lahai cry bavai the ilu hachak siv Mashiach par v'nasi sa'ir v'yachid ke kizba u sa'ir. The Gemara asks, but you can interpret these verses literally and performs one of them with regard to idol worship at all, as here in Leviticus chapter 4, where this verse was written. It is written with regard to the anointed priest, the high priest, stating that if he sinned unwittingly, he brings a bull as a sin offering. And with regard to a king who sinned unwittingly, it is said he brings a goat as a sin offering. And with regard to an ordinary individual, it is stated that he brings a female lamb or a goat. Okay. Whereas with regard to idol worship, we learned in a Braita 61b that, and they agree, that the high priest who unwittingly engages in idol worship brings a female goat as a sin offering, as does an ordinary individual. Clearly then, the halachot of unwitting idol worship are derived from a different source, namely Numbers chapter 15. Okay. The Gemara concludes, and there is nothing more discussed. Nothing more to be discussed. The subject to derive division of categories with regard to idol worship from the phrase and performs one of them is groundless and reveals his objection to Rabbi Abba's opinion is justified. He asked Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, when Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylon, he said, and that's going to be that.